Three Tories on defection watch. Right, grab your morning brew because we've got some absolutely delicious political drama brewing, and frankly, it's more entertaining than anything Netflix has put out this year. Three Conservative MPs are apparently having a bit of an identity crisis, and they're eyeing up Nigel Farage like he's the last pint at closing time. Welcome back to UK Daily Coffee, where we serve up your political news faster than you can say another U-turn, and today's serving is particularly spicy. Now, before we dive into this political soap opera, let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're at a house party, right? You've been hanging out with the same group for years, but suddenly they're playing music you hate, the conversation's gone stale, and someone across the room is throwing a much better party. That's essentially what's happening in the Conservative Party right now, except instead of switching rooms, these MPs might be switching entire political allegiances. So who are these potential party hoppers, and why are they considering trading in their blue rosettes for Reform UK's rather more, shall we say, distinctive shade of politics? Well, buckle up, because this story has more twists than a chubby checker greatest hits album. First up in our defection drama is Jonathan Gullis, former Education Minister and current MP who's apparently having a bit of a philosophical awakening. Now, Gullis isn't exactly your typical Tory grandee sipping tea in the home counties. This is a man who's never been shy about speaking his mind, and right now, his mind is apparently telling him that his ideology aligns more with Reform UK than with his current Conservative colleagues. It's like discovering your favourite band has gone in a completely different musical direction, and suddenly that indie group you've been ignoring is playing exactly the sound you've been craving. Gullis represents the kind of working-class conservatism that used to be the Tories' secret weapon in places like Stoke-on-Trent North, his constituency. But here's the thing about political loyalty: it's a bit like supporting a football team. You can put up with disappointing seasons, questionable management decisions, and even the odd relegation battle, but when the club fundamentally changes what it stands for, well, that's when fans start looking elsewhere. The fascinating thing about Gullis potentially jumping ship is what it says about the current state of the Conservative Party. This isn't some disgruntled backbencher who never got promoted, this is a former minister who presumably had a front-row seat to how the party operates. When someone with that level of insider knowledge starts questioning whether they're in the right political home, it's a bit like your mechanic telling you it might be time to trade in your car. But Gullis isn't alone in this political soul-searching. Our second potential defector, who's chosen to remain unnamed because apparently even political rebellion requires some discretion these days, has been particularly scathing about Kemi Badenoch's leadership. And when I say scathing, I mean they've basically given her the political equivalent of a one-star review on TripAdvisor. This anonymous MP has accused Badenoch of failing to define what conservatism actually means in 2024, which is a bit like being a tour guide who can't explain where you're going. Their frustration is palpable, and frankly, not entirely unreasonable. When your party leader can't articulate a clear vision of what you stand for, it's hardly surprising that MPs start wondering if they're backing the right horse. The unnamed MP's comments about Reform UK having a much clearer definition of the country they want to see is particularly telling. It suggests that clarity of message, even if you don't agree with all of it, can be more appealing than ideological confusion. It's like choosing between a restaurant with a focus menu that does a few things brilliantly versus one with a massive menu where nothing stands out. What makes this even more intriguing is the MP's admission that they don't currently feel the Conservative Party is their political home. That's not just policy disagreement, that's a fundamental sense of alienation from the organisation they've presumably devoted years of their life to serving. It's the political equivalent of realising you've been living in the wrong house. Now, our third potential defector adds another layer to this developing story. This MP, also choosing anonymity presumably because political defection isn't something you announce on social media like a new haircut, has confirmed they've been having informal chats with Reform UK members. It's like diplomatic talks, but for party politics. What's particularly interesting about this third MP is their description of themselves as a lifelong Conservative who wants a genuinely Conservative government. This isn't someone who's never been committed to Conservative principles, this is someone who feels those principles are better represented elsewhere. It's like being a devoted fan of classic rock who discovers that the tribute band down the road sounds more like the original than the actual surviving members. The phrase "that lifelong conservative" carries enormous weight here. This suggests someone who didn't join the party for career advancement or opportunism, but out of genuine ideological conviction. When people like that start questioning their political allegiance, it's a seismic shift, not just a minor tremor. But let's zoom out for a moment and consider what this all means for the broader political landscape. 3 MPs considering defection might not sound like much in a parliament of 650, but in politics, as in avalanches, it's often the small movements that trigger the big ones. These aren't just any 3 MPs, these are former ministers and long-serving representatives who understand the political game inside and out. The timing of these potential defections is also crucial. We're not in the immediate aftermath of a major scandal or policy disaster. This appears to be a more gradual realization that the Conservative Party, as currently constituted, doesn't represent their values or vision for Britain. That's potentially more damaging than a knee-jerk reaction to a single event because it suggests deeper, structural problems. Reform UK, meanwhile, must be feeling a bit like they've won the lottery. Having sitting MPs consider jumping ship to your party is the kind of validation money can't buy. It legitimizes their political project in a way that polling numbers or membership figures never could. Suddenly, they're not just the insurgent party making noise from the sidelines, they're potentially the destination for experienced parliamentarians seeking a new political home. Nigel Farage, never one to miss a political opportunity, has been positioning Reform UK as the true inheritor of conservative values. It's a clever strategy, essentially arguing that they've stayed true to traditional conservative principles while the actual Conservative Party has drifted away from them. It's like claiming to be more Catholic than the Pope, except in this case, the Pope might actually be agreeing with you. The implications for Kemi Badenoch's leadership are obvious and potentially devastating. When your own MPs are publicly questioning whether you know what conservatism means, that's not exactly a ringing endorsement of your political authority. It's the parliamentary equivalent of being told by your own children that the neighbour does family dinner better than you do. Badenoch's challenge is particularly acute because she's dealing with a party that's already been through multiple identity crises. The Conservatives have pivoted from Cameron's compassionate conservatism to May's responsible capitalism to Johnson's populist conservatism to Truss's turbocharged free market approach and now to whatever Badenoch's version turns out to be. At some point, all that pivoting starts to look less like strategic adaptation and more like political confusion. The broader question this raises is whether the Conservative Party can hold together its increasingly diverse coalition. You've got traditional one-nation conservatives, free market libertarians, social conservatives, and populist nationalists all under the same big tent. That's worked when they were winning elections, but in opposition, those ideological tensions become much harder to manage. Reform UK's appeal to these potential defectors seems to be its clarity of vision, even if that vision is controversial. In an era of political complexity and compromise, there's something attractive about a party that knows exactly what it stands for, even if you don't agree with all of it. It's the political equivalent of preferring a strong opinion you disagree with over weak opinions you can barely discern. But let's not get carried away here. Potential defections and actual defections are two very different things. Politics is full of MPs who flirt with leaving their parties but ultimately decide the devil they know is better than the devil they don't. The social and professional costs of defection are enormous, and most MPs, however frustrated, tend to stick with their original political families. That said, the mere fact that these conversations are happening and being reported suggests a level of Conservative Party dysfunction that goes beyond normal opposition blues. When sitting MPs are openly questioning whether their party represents their values, that's not just a communications problem, that's an existential crisis. The Reform UK factor adds another dimension to this because they are not just any alternative party. They represent a very specific brand of politics that combines traditional conservative values with populist nationalism and Euroscepticism. For MPs who feel the Conservative Party has become too centrist or too willing to compromise on core issues, Reform UK offers a more uncompromising alternative. What makes this particularly fascinating is how it mirrors broader trends in politics across the Western world. Traditional centre-right parties everywhere are struggling to hold together coalitions that include both moderate conservatives and more radical populist elements. Sometimes, as we've seen with Trump's takeover of the Republican Party, the populists win. Other times, the moderates prevail, but often at the cost of losing their more radical wing to new parties. The UK's electoral system makes this dynamic particularly interesting because our first-past-the-post system typically punishes party splits. But Reform UK's growing poll numbers suggest they might be approaching the threshold where defection becomes politically viable rather than career suicide. So what happens next? Well, that depends on a lot of factors, most of which are beyond the control of these three MPs. If the Conservative Party continues to struggle in opposition, if Badenoch fails to articulate a compelling vision, and if Reform UK continues to grow in strength and credibility, then defection becomes increasingly attractive. On the other hand, if the Conservatives find their footing, if they start winning some political battles, or if Reform UK stumbles, then these MPs might decide they're better off trying to change their party from within rather than jumping ship. The fascinating thing about political defection is that it's often as much about emotion as ideology. MPs invest enormous amounts of their identity in their party membership. Leaving feels like divorce, even when the relationship has clearly broken down. That emotional attachment to the Conservative brand might ultimately keep these MPs in place, even if their heads are telling them to leave. But here's the thing about political momentum: once the defection dam breaks, it can break quickly. If one of these MPs jumps, it makes it much easier for the others to follow. And if Reform UK can demonstrate that they can provide a viable political home for experienced parliamentarians, it changes the entire dynamic of British politics. We're potentially watching the birth of a genuine three-party system in British politics, something we haven't seen since the Liberal Democrats' heyday in the early 2000s. That would make British politics more unpredictable, more fragmented, and frankly, more interesting. So there you have it, folks. 3 Conservative MPs on defection watch, a party leader struggling to define what her party stands for, and an insurgent movement that's looking increasingly like a credible alternative. It's political drama at its finest, and we're just getting started. What do you think? Are these MPs right to question their party loyalty, or should they stick with the Conservative ship through stormy seas? Are we witnessing the beginning of a major political realignment, or just the usual opposition party growing pains? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because honestly, your political insights are often sharper than most of what we get from Westminster these days. And if you're enjoying this kind of deep dive political analysis served up with your morning coffee, make sure you're subscribed because we're covering every twist and turn of this political soap opera as it unfolds. Hit that notification bell, because in British politics right now, the next plot twist is never more than a few hours away. Until next time, keep your political radar switched on, and remember, in the immortal words of political observers everywhere, you couldn't make this stuff up.